First of all, of course, we would like to uh, welcome two of the international guests that we have here this evening. Miss Fatima H. Abbas. She has joined, and she is a literary translator and international publishing and literary consultant from Cairo. And we have Lawrence Schimel. Is that correct pronunciation? Schimel?
Schimel.
Schimel. Okay. Mr. Lawrence Schimel, and he is a full-time author. He writes in both Spanish and English, and he's based in Spain.
In Madrid, yes.
Yeah, and we have the pleasure and privilege to be joined by our chairman, Professor Govind Prasad Sharma, who is here attending and chairing this session, and Mr. Yuvraj Malik, the director of National Book Trust India, is here with us, and he will be giving the Indian perspective on the this issue of bilingual books that we have come out in the light of the new education policy. And we have also been joined by Ms. Neera Jain, who is the chief editor of our house. The basic idea behind this dialogue is, of course, to kind of share some kind of, experience sharing in terms of how well the bilingual books are taken by the children of this age group, especially of 6 and 10, and whether it really helps in teaching them two languages simultaneously. Because as an editor, I always believe that all bilingual books are actually, all children books are actually bilingual, because on the one side you have the text that tells you a language, and on the other side you have the images, which also, accompanies the stories, and also have their own languages to convey. First of all, to start to begin the proceedings, I would request our director, Mr. Yuvraj Malik, to kindly share the entire background and against which these bilingual books have been brought out in particular, and also the new education policy which has been announced by the government of India, and how it is going to help in the entire learning ecosystem, and what are our other future plans, and what kind of associations that we hope to have with two of the international speakers who are from two different parts of the world, and quite distinguished international publishers and author. So I request Mr. Yuvraj Malik to kindly give us a overview in 5 to 7 minutes, so that some kind of agenda is set for today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Vikramji, and very good morning, good afternoon to all my guests who joined from across, and my unconditional apology for not able to make in time from the airport. So please forgive me for that. Now coming back to the theme of the session which we have today. See,
Yeah,
if you look back in last 4 decades, India is one of the largest demography and democratic country which has come up on the landscape. Diversity, linguistic, cultural, social, political, and also the size of the demography we have is our asset. It's a strength to us. We are a country where more than hundreds and thousands of languages and dialects are spoken. We have more than 22 officially recognized languages. We, as a national institution of publishing, are publishing almost in all the languages. The idea is to understand the canvas where we are talking about. We have almost 33 crore, that is around 330 million students directly impacted by this education policy. So this global changes, economic privatization, liberalization. The only thing which India was lacking was economic, the educational and academic reforms. Now, this new education policy has come up with a new flavor to emphasize that the foundation should be Indian values. The outlook should be totally international. The character should be very interactive and impactful. And also, it should cater for inclusivity to produce an education system, a complete ecosystem which is quality based, access based, equity based, affordability based, and with a sense of accountability. Now, seeing the linguistic diversity, what we have, the kind of audience and the target group which we have, the many reforms which are taken from school till higher education, but two reforms I would like to talk specifically about is first is the education system has focused on grassroots learning. Now we follow 5334. That means 3 years of preschool has become a flow to the integrated learning program of the school education system. That is informal learning, that is creative learning, that is toy based learning, that is activity based learning. The idea is how do we create and maintain a flow of learning and education in the curriculum. Second point is we have inserted a formula of three languages. I'll explain three language formula, which says you can pick up any two Indian languages and one foreign languages. So the education at the grassroots level and school level has to be in mother tongue. The tongue, not by birth, but the tongue where you were born, where you grow up, where you learn. So the first language of learning has to be the mother tongue or the regional tongue. Then you can pick up any other Indian language, and after the middle class educations are over, you are free to pick up any foreign language. So the idea is not to curtail the choices. We have given more options. We have given more flexibility to the education system. And this multilinguistic and multidisciplinary approach, which we want to create in the education system, will help us to lead to internationalization of education. So our students will not be singularly Hindi spoken or English spoken. Hindi and English, of course, the two largest spoken language in India we have. But along with will have a regional character and also an international flavor to it. With my esteemed guests who have done commendably well in their careers in life, Fatima ji and Mr. Lawrence, I congratulate you for your wonderful, fantastic academic credentials in the field of language. So the point is, where do we go now? We have set the target, we have set the policy, but how do we achieve it? So the important role comes with the content. What kind of content we are going to create? The content has to be in what language? How do we assimilate? How do we integrate the learning? How do we integrate the languages? With that idea, we have already started National Education Policy Series, NEP series of publication, wherein we are coming with bilingual books. So the first phase is going only for Hindi and English. Those who are good in Hindi, they can go to English, and those who are good English, they can go to Hindi. If you see, you can see both the sides. Same page, Hindi, English, same narrative build up. The idea is the children may understand in one language, but how do we correlate with another language? So that linguistic pairing we are going to do with all the Indian national languages which are recognized in the constitution. That is 22 languages. Now the third point in sequence to this is learning. You take an example. When you teach your young kid, student who's just picking up knowledge and language, he asks, Mama, what is this? Papa, what is this? Then we don't tell him the same language. We try to explain him first in the language he understands by birth, by the mother tongue, and then get him back to the language he is trying to learn. So that is the power of language. Language not only gives the literary meaning, it also gives you emotions. It also gives you a bonding. It also gives you values. So your knowledge system, your value system, your principle, ethos, morals, they can only penetrate into the character through mother language. So we want to focus upon it. And as scientists say, neurobiologists say, behavioralists says, everyone says that the brain growth takes place 6 to 8 years. And that is the time we have to teach them in the language they understand maximum. And that is where role of people like us who are important stakeholders in the implementation of this policy by producing world-class quality content which caters local need and also and address the international audience. We are also publishing in many foreign languages, that is UN recognized French, and then Chinese, Korean, many languages we are publishing. The idea is to take the content into foreign languages as well, so that we are at par and seamlessly synergized and integrated with the global education system. That's what will lead us to internationalization of education, So this is the complete canvas which I wanted to share with you. And based on that, we are going to innovate and come up with more publications with diversified knowledge and content. And now I leave the house open to Vikram to take on with our experts panel, which is present with us. Over to Vikramji.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Uh, Thanks for giving us this perspective. And uh, we have uh, organized this session uh, on the sidelines of the New Delhi World Book Fair, which we are organizing in the on the virtual mode this time, because all over, as everybody knows, most of the book fairs had to go on the virtual mode because of the pandemic. And we thought of, since we were coming out with the set of books, and it has been launched, we thought of sort of taking some inputs of the various other culture societies, which have to deal with bilingual or trilingual or multilingual scenario, and how these issues are addressed, because in many places like us, there is also the issues related to the colonial history, which has played its own role in creating the languages and the way we deal with our languages. So I would first like to request Miss Fatima H. Abbas. She is a literary translator an international publishing and literary consultant. In 2014, she attended the Cairo International Book Fair and was responsible for the section of English and French learning books due to her fluency in both languages. She went on to become the head of the external relations and translation department for one of the most reputable publishing and distribution houses in Cairo, Egypt. In addition to her work as a literary translator, she now has her own literary agency, Fala, and works as an international publishing and literary consultant. And of course, I believe she is fluent in Arabic, and that would be her main language. So, may I request Ms. Fatima Abbas to kindly give her inputs on some of the questions that I had sent to you, just to initiate the dialogue, and maybe in 5 7 minutes you can give your viewpoints.
First of all, I that I'm very pleased to be here for the New Delhi World Book Fair. It's an important book fair, and it's a great addition for me to be with you all, guys. Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for reaching out to me. That was so thoughtful and considerate. And I would love to express my gratitude for being around such great people, and my dearest Lawrence as well. And thank you so much for the great introduction. And first, let me highlight that, bilingual books in general, I mean that for kids, I see bilingual books are very important, because in the first place, it benefit the parents as well. So it encourages parents to read in their home language. As parents who do not speak any or very much English, for example, which is the worldwide language, may not be comfortable reading English-only books to their children. So being read and talked to in any language is important for building those pre-literary skills, so its children can be ready to learn once they start school. And the strong pre-literary skills in the child's home language prepare their brains to learn reading, writing, and improve their capacity to learn both languages. So for very young children, learning a language is not only the goal, but the goal also is building strong neural connections, and it's a very important one. And I would say that bilingual books also build vocabulary in both languages. especially since, the playground language doesn't expose children to concepts that they need to know for school in their second language. But bilingual books familiarize children with academic language and post language, preparing them to succeed starting from the kindergarten and beyond. It also helped them to feel like included. So, in my opinion, it's important for children to find themselves represented in stories and illustrations. If their family speaks a language that is not common where they live, they may begin to feel alienated. For instance, for languages like Urdu, Burmese, it can be hard to find any resources for children at all. So bilingual books and foreign language books, they can provide children with much needed representation of their home language or even their race and culture. And it also highlight other cultures, and a wonderful way to help younger children learn about and become more accepting of other culture and people. Learning about other people can boost children with social and emotional development. And for example, I always thought of that a children books publisher should include, all the diversity and all the inclusion for the children. Like, for instance, they should include different races in their books, different languages, different, let's say, skin color, hair color. So every children should feel included. And moreover, I see that bilingual books are also fun. Reading in general is fun, but languages can be fun too. So this is, I mean, this, I wouldn't say this in brief as an introduction. And if we go to the area that I cover, which is the MENA region, I mean, the Middle East and North African countries, I think bilingual books are a very important part because most of the countries in the MENA region, for instance, Lebanon, they speak English and Arabic and French fluently. In North African countries like Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, they speak Arabic and French fluently. And even here in Egypt, we now have schools in French, in English. We even developed the Chinese and Japanese schools as well, beside English and Arabic. So bilingual books is not yet a big deal. It's easily distributed everywhere. And I would really love to see books, in both languages on the same page, or the page and the other page is facing with different language, so so children can learn more. And I think there are so many strategies for India and other countries as well to be able to develop such books through distribution channels, through translation rights. But I see that those children titles should be complying with international standards. They should be included all kinds of cultures and backgrounds to meet every children in the world. So this is in brief, my opinion and my view about bilingual books.
Thank you, Fatima, for your insightful inputs. Before I move on to Lawrence, just one quick question: uh, uh, Is there in the Arabic world, is there any some kind of a special program from the government agencies to promote bilingual books?
No, not really, actually. It's all, like we say, that independent and the private publishers tend to exert effort themselves to promote the bilingual books, but no structured program from the government.
Okay, okay, thank you. So
Thank you.
now we move on to our next speaker, Mr. Lawrence Schimel. He's a full-time author, writing in both Spanish and English, who has published over 120 books in a wide range of genres. His writing has been translated into over 40 languages, including Kurdish, Farsi, Welsh, Makua, Chengana, Maltese, Romansh, and Icelandic. He has curated many different bilingual projects that have been published in many different combinations: Spanish English, Basque English, Catalan English, Slovenian English, Hungarian English, Dutch Armenian, Dutch Arabic, German, Russian, etc. He is also a prolific literary translator. He was one of the original founders of World Catholic Month and is a staunch advocate for translating works for young readers. We are really happy that Mr. Lawrence Schimel is with us, and I will request him to kindly give his first reactions and the kind of the wide range and the enriching range of experience that he has in not only writing but also for developing bilingual projects. Mr. Schmil.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the New Delhi Book Fair and the National Book Trust of India for inviting me to speak about this interesting topic, and congratulations as well for the new bilingual editions that have just been published. It was interesting to see the catalogue and to see some of the early books. I like the way that the books have each language on each page. I think that's a very interesting way of doing it, and there's so much that comes into play with how bilingual books are presented, that whether one language is given priority over another. That does happen in some projects. I can show just a nice example. This is a book from New Zealand. There's a tui in our teapot, which is also translated into Te Reo Maori, but the English is first. It's in a bigger language. The Maori is almost secondary. So I'm glad that the National Book Trust books show the two languages in complete equality. I think that's an important thing to do for the books. I really liked when you mentioned that all children's books are bilingual because they have both the narrative in the text and the narrative in the images. I do also think that there's a sort of bilingual experience, which is that very often you have an adult reading to a child, so you have both both people in the reading experience. So very often bilingual books are very useful for families where maybe one generation speaks or does not speak the same languages. So very often bilingual books allow for different generations to share the same story. And that I think is very important. It's different, I guess, with some of not all of the languages have the same alphabets. And so how books are presented, this is something where, for instance, this is one of my own children's books. This happens to be the Slovenian English edition. And you can see that each language has its own color, and that's used throughout. So that in this case, the English text is always in red and the Slovenian text is always in black to make it easy to distinguish. Obviously, in the example of the Hindi English, the alphabet itself shows, the same. For instance, this is a book, the same book that's published in a Dutch Arabic and also a Dutch, I think this is the a Dutch Turkish edition. Obviously, the Arabic, which reads in the opposite direction and is also visibly in a different alphabet, the difference in color, for instance, makes it is much more important when both of the languages are in the same, in this case, using a Roman alphabet. So those are some other things to be aware of. I think in terms of content, one of the things that this project has such tremendous potential is not just to translate into all of the regional languages of India, but also to translate from the regional languages of India. That is to have original texts in Marathi or Bengal or any of the languages, and then to translate those into Hindi, English, and all of the other languages, instead of only translating from the more dominant political languages into those languages. I also think that there's a really interesting opportunity for the educational system that is teaching foreign languages from an Indian perspective using Indian content. That is, even though the words and the language may be foreign, having familiar cultural details, that is using Indian content that's been translated into, let's say, German or French or Spanish. It may be easier for children to understand or to learn using familiar characters or Indian names, characters that gives them something to anchor to, I guess. Let me just see. I think of a brief, quick response. That's probably what I have to say for now. Hopefully we'll have some more interesting dialogue and continue discussing all of the possibilities of bilingual books and how they operate.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I was just wondering that since so many of your books have gone into different languages and perhaps in bilingual formats as well, and since we have also sort of agreed that the images themselves have a language too, they carry a language in themselves. But when we are talking about bilingual books and translations, we are only translating the text, and we are of course not, changing the illustrations. So, do you think that the culture-specific illustration going into different languages creates maybe its own interesting pattern, or creates its own, I would say, challenges and difficulties for a kid reader, and how his or her parents or teachers or guardians are expected to respond to the same.
I think that especially where the illustration, so very often with regular translation, you do sometimes come up with issues where elements in the illustration need to be changed. For instance, I have a book that was published in Brazil, and when it was translated into English, the signs had to be changed. There was a no parking sign that had an E with an with a slash through it, because in Portuguese it's no estacionar, but in English that had to be changed to a P for no parking. So in that case, the actual signs in the illustration had to be changed. I do think that there's a value to having the cultural specific illustrations in all of the languages as well. That is, that it's not just, I think that familiarity is something that is important. I do think that one thing that's very different is writing a book that's bilingual is different than translating a text on its own. So very often, because of the bilingual nature, when I write, for instance, if I'm doing a bilingual English-Spanish book, no matter which language I write originally, when I do the bilingual version, when I do the translation, I very often change the original because both languages need to match, especially if it's a book that's for language learning. There needs to be strict parallel text. This means that, for instance, I mentioned the Slovenian English version of this book, which was called Just Like Them. In German, it was changed. The title was changed to Ich auch, which means me too, or yo también in the Spanish. So in this case, Ich auch, the German version, was used. This was published in Germany in German, Spanish, German, English, German, French, German, Italian, German, Russian, German, Greek, German, Turkish editions, and all the time the German text stayed the same and only changed the different languages. I do think that books that are, as Fatima was talking about, that we live in a very global multicultural world, and it's important that we have access to all of the rich diversity of the world, but also that we have it in all of our languages. That is, very often they only translate certain content into certain languages. I know, for instance, in let's say in a place like Colombia, they may translate Colombian folklore into the indigenous Colombian languages, but the children, very often, they know their own culture. What they need are things like Harry Potter in their native language, not just. So, I mean, I think there's a double. There are, I think, both in terms of which language, there's a lot of politics in terms of which languages and which cultures are considered universal and which are considered local or niche. Very often in children's books, we talk about mirrors and windows, that sometimes books serve as a mirror for children to see themselves in books, and that's vitally important. And sometimes books are a window that is it gives us an experience to see another culture and to empathize with it. Both are
Thank you.
important. So.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Before we come back to our director who talked about possibilities of international collaborations, and we broached this subject, I would like to pose a question to the chief editor of National Book Trust, Miss Neera Jain, who has had a very long and distinguished career in publishing for last 3 decades, and she has been looking after the children's book series of our house. But since most of the career has a span on the one language or model lingual books, I would like to ask her as an editor and as a publisher and also as a writer that does she think that uh, putting two languages in a particular book may prove to be a bit of more challenging for a kid reader, or or maybe it is a requirement of our multilingual society, and we need to find ways to do the same. Miss Neera Jain.
Thank you very much, Vikram. With due respects to NBT chairman and NBT director, as well as our guests from abroad, I would like to say that we have been publishing translations of our books for children, and so far we have translated into 58 languages, which has been quite a challenging experience. But bringing out bilingual books for children can be even more challenging because you are integrating into one text two languages which have to match the illustrations also. For younger children, you have to take this into account before you finalize the book. And listening to Mr. Lawrence, I really liked his idea of, giving a different color to each language. That is not the only thing. There is a very creative aspect to the whole process, and I think that is what keeps us going. And because now the whole issue has been formalized through the national education policy, we have to provide books bilingually. And in India, we have around more than 19,000, around 1,900 languages which are spoken, and dialects too. So it is quite challenging for us, to which language we need to select in bilingual format. So we have come to terms with the whole issue, and we are trying to resolve in what languages, but the task is massive and it will be a continuous process. Hopefully, by the end of this year, we'll be able to bring out more books, introducing more languages, looking at the importance of bilingual books. Thank you, Vikram.
Our director, Mr. Yuvraj Malik. Uh, Sir, you talked about the possibilities of promoting these books in foreign languages. So maybe we have got two kinds of audiences abroad for us. One was, of course, the Indian diaspora community, which is quite large in itself at various places, and of course the other would be the general the local population. So what kind of I would say the strategy we can think about in terms of collaboration, since we have one speaker from the Arabic world, which is quite big in itself, and there is Mr. Schimel, who is from the Spanish, which is equally big. And it's quite a coincidence that last year we brought out some of our titles in both Arabic and in Spanish. So in this context, I would request our director to say give his inputs on this.
Yeah, thank you, Vikram. And you are right. Knowledge is not a domain of reason. Knowledge is a global asset. We must share it, we must expand it, and we must, take it to the large corner of the country and the universe. So this job of dissemination through publication is a very important assignment which we have in NEP to take on. So since I was working on, we have such a diverse pool with us. So initially with a start point, we can pick up couple of legendary books or couple of books which are, got a very good response in our community also, and we can have a target market in French, German, Turkish, or whatever it is. And in reciprocal arrangements, similarly, they can also give us some of the books which they feel is the content that our children should read, our young generation should go through, and that a joint task force kind of arrangement can be made, wherein we provide our expertise on reciprocal arrangement, and on their side they provide. And we would love to take some good content from their side into Indian languages and take it here. Similarly, we will request one of the counterpart agency there in a reciprocal arrangement to do the same kind of work for some of the books. We can start with 2 books, 5 books, or whatever mutually agreed upon. A common platform can be discussed, and we can definitely take the content all over the world. As far as market is concerned, there are more than 10,000 schools in India which we have, which are teaching almost all foreign languages. More than 100 schools are which are in good department of foreign language in school level. All top school has got French, German, Spanish as a supplementary language. So as far as market is concerned, there's no dearth of it. These schools are good enough size to, advocate the content. So only thing we have to find a mechanism where we get the content quality to be very high. If the content is good, publication is not an issue. So my counterpart on the other side, Fatima, Miss Fatima and Lawrence can give their view on this. So I think that will be a new lead which can start with. And nothing like it if we have 3, 4 country collaboration to come up with a new content, one from one Far East, one from Europe, one from South Asia. So what kind of beautiful content it will come up? That will be a unique initiative when 4 different continents coming together and producing one good quality content.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Uh, in the last segment, Fatima and Lawrence, we would be, of course, sharing a set, each of the books that we have published with you, so that you can let us know what kind of content would be suitable in your part of the world and society. Uh, uh, would you like to give some quick comments on the possibilities of promoting these books in Arabic and Spanish respectively before I come back to our chairperson for his summing up and his chairman's remarks. Fatima.
Okay, regarding Arabic, I think as I just not a big deal because as I see most of the children books produced in India are in English. Or even if they are not in English, you already have the English version because I see that English is a second language for Indians. And in the MENA region, actually, all of the children can speak English fluent like Arabic. And I see some Indian publishers already distribute to the Arabic world. And I do work for distribution as well with my agency some Indian publishers to promote their books in the Arabic world. However, at some points we need to have to evaluate the content to comply with the Arab world culture and background and how the parents of those children want to bring them up. But I think we have such similarities, and when it comes to children, I think they are all the same in the world. So this can be done through many collaborations, whether it's through distribution to independent publishers, private sectors like, for instance, the bookshops, or even we can collaborate with the government itself to make it more official between the two governments. For instance, in Egypt and India, through the embassy of India and such countries to the schools with such educative books from Indian publishers as well. So there are a lot of means, and also if we mention book fairs, Indian publishers participate and they are very present at book fairs, especially in the GCC countries like Saudi Arabia and Sharjah Book Fair, for instance. They have, a full hall dedicated for Indian and Pakistani publishers, and they go very well, even way better than the Arab publishers themselves. So I think yes, we can have collaboration with so many options, and it's not a big deal. We can easily collaborate together and look for the contents that can benefit both cultures at the same time.
Thank you. That's quite encouraging to know, and we would like to follow it up on that. And Lawrence, what would be your inputs? Children are all same everywhere. So in that context,
As Fatima was saying, I do think that there isn't, especially since I think that the National Book Trust is publishing already in the Spanish as well, some of the bilingual books. And so one thing that can happen is that the National Book Trust can exhibit at certain book fairs, the Guadalajara Book Fair, for instance, in Mexico, or the Madrid Book Fair here in Madrid, and sell directly these Indian content, Indian authors, Indian illustrators, books in Indian languages. This is something where, especially if the book trust is going to be publishing not just that is to be doing Spanish as one of the languages with various other languages. So if you're having Hindi and Spanish, and Tamil and Spanish, and Urdu and Spanish, and Kannada and Spanish. So there is definitely an Indian diaspora. Obviously, the Indian diaspora in the English-speaking world is the largest. So the bilingual editions from the various Indian languages to English are probably the books that will have the broadest foreign appeal for families that want to keep or want to teach their children their traditional languages that they don't necessarily have a context for in the countries that they're living in now. But I mean, certainly here in Spain, my neighborhood here in Madrid is a very Indian neighborhood from lots of different parts of India, and speak lots of different languages. So I mean, I do think that there is also a market for diaspora, but also for people to learn about India. So that is books, let's say, about cultural, a book about Diwali, for instance, that's in a bilingual edition that has Spanish. That's a type of book that certainly would be of interest for many children to learn about aspects of Indian culture that they might not otherwise have aspect to. So what I mentioned before of books being both mirrors and windows, so that is, there are children outside of India who need to see themselves represented in books. Very often the Indian children or the children of Indian or the diaspora don't see themselves physically represented in the books as much. People who look like them, who have names like them. So that's something that's a lack definitely here in Spain. So.
thank you, thank you. I would just like to mention that the Guadalajara International Book Fair in 2019, India was the guest of honor, and we did a very big show there. And in that context only, that our books we had translated 12 of our books into Spanish. And as you talked about Diwali, and that made me remember that of all the books, there was one book on the story of tea, which was a big a draw in among the kids and also among the readers.
But I
So
think it's
we
important just to mention that very often countries come and are guest of honor, but very often both the publishers who visit and don't have follow-up. That is, it's important to continue to have a presence at the Guadalajara Book Fair or at any of the book fairs that are going to, it's important, I think, on an institutional level to understand that these are things that take time. That is, relationships between Indian publishers and foreign publishers don't happen just from one event. Usually one event is great to meet you, but usually it's the second or the third time at the fair when the actual business will start to happen. I mean, certainly for Latin America, and I think also Fatima can talk about how in I think in the Arab world, so much depends on personal meetings and repeated personal meetings that that lead to books getting distributed, and also, you know, not just for selling rights but also distribution. You know, these are all things that take multiple years of repeated attendance, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
you
I
are.
agree with Lawrence, because the first time is very good to make the relationship, and my concept always that we make friendship before we do business to make things much easier later after. But the follow-up is much more important than the deal itself, because you can just make the deal and everyone goes back to it's a country, and then it's done. You just good the contact, and you did nothing with the bursting cord or whatever. So yeah, the follow-up is much more important, and the follow-up can last for years actually, because as we mentioned distribution, you need to follow up for this for the end of the contract, which will extend for like 3 years, 5 years, and we can still count.
Yes, of course. The follow up is very important because it is really a long drawn process, and it's first the meeting of the minds, and then of course meeting of the other interests which happen. Thanks a lot.
Just
Thanks
one more
indeed.
thing to
Yeah.
mention before we go on. I know, for instance, when the Baltic countries were the guest of honor at the London, different countries had different philosophies, and some just subsidized the translation of their books into other languages. For instance, Lithuania paid for the British Council of Literary Translation. They subsidized translation programs for Lithuanian to English translators, so that by putting money or support to develop translators from, for instance, many of the Indian languages directly into some of the major languages. So for instance, if they were, direct translators from Kannada into Spanish, or Kannada into Arabic, or Urdu into Spanish, I think that so far everything has to go right now through English as the bridge language, and I think that cultivating more direct translation is another strategy for increasing Indian content being able to be distributed all around the world. So
Now we come to the end of the session, and we have had very engaging dialogue, and we hope to carry it forward. And I would now request our respected chairperson, Professor Govind Prasad Sharma, to give his remarks and the chair's remarks. Our chairperson, Professor Sharma.
सभी को नमस्कार। एक बहुत अच्छी रिच और इंटरेस्टिंग ये जो डिस्कशन हुआ, इसमें कई डायमेंशंस और कई परतें कहिए विचार की, उसको लेकर के बहुत कुछ विचार किया गया है। लॉरेंस, फातिमा जी अब्बास, नीरा जी जैन, युवराज जी और मॉडरेटर के रूप में कुमार विक्रम कुछ मुद्दे और कुछ प्रश्नों को लेकर के एक अच्छा विचार राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति 2020 में भाषा को लेकर व्यवस्थाएं की गई हैं उन पर किया गया है। वैसे देखिए, इसके कई डायमेंशंस हैं, ग्लोबल है, नेशनल है, रीजनल है, लोकल भी है। सवाल केवल बाइलिंगुअल बुक्स के लिखने तक सीमित नहीं है, उसके पीछे का पर्पज क्या है, व्हाट इज द पर्पज बिहाइंड दिस होल एक्सरसाइज। पर्पज ये है, मैं बिल्कुल बेसिक नीचे की चीज पर विचार करता हूँ, कोई नेशनल और इंटरनेशनल लेवल पर विचार नहीं करता। लोकल उसमें देखिए, मैं इसलिए इस बात को गंभीरता से कह रहा हूँ कि मध्य प्रदेश के अंदर जब टेक्स्ट बुक राइटिंग कमेटी का मैं चेयरमैन था, तो देयर वाज अ चैलेंज। Should we include dialogues in our writing, or simply we should write in a national language or Hindi or English or Marathi? उसका रीजन है, ये जो डायलॉग्स हैं, जो बोलियां हैं, इन बोलियों में संवाद तो है लेकिन अच्छा साहित्य नहीं है, एक अच्छा लिटरेचर नहीं है। और बोलियों को यदि निग्लेक्ट किया तो धीमे धीमे ये बोलियां मर जाएंगी, समाप्त हो जाएंगी। बोलियों को सुरक्षित रखना भी जरूरी है और उनमें अच्छा साहित्य देना भी जरूरी है। एक विचारक का मैंने एक कथन पढ़ा था, उस समय नाम तो ध्यान नहीं आ रहा मेरे को, पर उसने एक बहुत महत्व की बात कही थी। आपसी बातचीत में यदि कोई एक शब्द का प्रयोग नहीं होता तो शब्द की मौत हो जाती है। वर्षों तक यदि हम उस एक शब्द का प्रयोग न करें तो वो शब्द प्रचलन से खत्म हो जाता, उसकी मौत हो जाती है। ये ऐसा ही है जैसे कि पूरे समाज में एक व्यक्ति की मौत हो गई। अब यहां तो जब पूरी की पूरी लैंग्वेज या पूरी की पूरी बोली की ही मौत हो जाएगी, जैसे कि हो रही है, कई भाषाएं मर रही हैं, तो उसको हम क्या कहेंगे? वो तो ट्रेजेडी है, त्रासदी है। तो उनको यदि जिंदा रहना है, उनको यदि जिंदा आप रखना चाहते हैं, तो उनमें अच्छा साहित्य आपको देना होगा। तो ये जो आपकी पुस्तकें लिखी जाएंगी, ये जो बाइलिंगुअल जो प्रॉब्लम है या जो जो पहल है, बल्कि मल्टीलिंगुअल, इसके आगे जाने की जरूरत पड़ेगी हमको। तो वो इसीलिए है कि वहां तक हम अपने अच्छे विचारों को पहुंचाएं, उनकी लैंग्वेज में पहुंचाएं, उनकी लिपि में पहुंचाएं। तो इसके पीछे की ये स्पिरिट और ये भावना बहुत अधिक है। दूसरी बात ये है कि बोलियां उनको उस लेवल पर एक लिमिटेड जो टेरिटरी है या उनका जो ज्योग्राफिकल जो बाउंड्री है, वहां तक तो उनके लिए सहज है व्यवहार करना। लेकिन यदि उनको बिजनेस करना है, यदि उनको सर्विस करना है, यदि उनको और उस एरिया के आगे जाना है, तो उनको उस रीजनल लैंग्वेज या नेशनल लैंग्वेज और दीगर लैंग्वेज की पढ़ने की जरूरत है। इसलिए उनको ये जो बाइलिंगुअल जो बुक्स हैं, ये प्रोवाइड करने की जरूरत है। इसी को ध्यान में रख करके नेशनल जो एजुकेशन पॉलिसी 2020 बनी है, उसमें लैंग्वेजेस के ऊपर बहुत अधिक जोर दिया है। जैसे एक सा आदमी नहीं हो सकता, वैसे पूरी दुनिया में एक लैंग्वेज नहीं हो सकती। डिफरेंट कल्चर को, यदि आप जिंदा ट्रेडिशंस को, कस्टम्स को यदि आप जिंदा रखना चाहते हैं तो उसकी लैंग्वेज को भी आपको जिंदा रखना पड़ेगा। और इस हिसाब से सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने एक बहुत अच्छे विचारों को रखा है और इस मामले में सभी के जो सुझाव आए हैं वो विचारणीय हैं और निश्चित रूप से एक विचार को आगे बढ़ाने में, इस विचार को आगे बढ़ाने में अभी जो डिस्कशंस किए गए ये हेल्पफुल होंगे और एक जिसको दिशा कहने की बात है, एक लाइन लेने की बात है, वो हम इससे ले सकेंगे। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, sir. I would just quickly give some brief points which our chairman highlighted for our foreign guests, and he he is very happy and he has congratulated the panelists for making the discussions an enriching experience, and many important points have emerged during the discussions. And he also referred to the national education policy, and he says that actually there are three layers attached to it, and one is of course the global, and there is national, and there is of course a local layer involved in it, and which is also very important because in India we don't have only languages, but there are hundreds and thousands of dialects also, and there are dialects which are actually quite endangered, and they are going out of circulation. And if, as you say, that if a word is not used between in a community for a long time, it dies, it goes out of circulation, and that is happening to the entire concept of our dialects. So there are issues of protecting the dialects, and there are also at the same time the issues of enriching the dialects with the literatures of other languages, and it's a balancing act that we have to do. And so that is the purpose behind the bilingual books. Is of course we are starting off with Hindi and then English, but we will have various other linguistic variations, and and the dialects and the languages which are spoken in a limited area. They are good enough for day-to-day communication. But if you have to go out for business, if you have to go out for trade, if you have to go out for high education, and then naturally you need to learn new languages, and these bilingual books would be able to fulfill that expectation to a great extent, and the experiences shared by Miss Fatima and Mr. Lawrence Schimel will surely enrich our perspective, and we will be able to follow it up further. So with this, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your insightful comments from the chair. And we come to the end of the session. And I would really like to thank once again Ms. Fatima Abbas and Mr. Lawrence Schimel for being with us, for responding to our invitation, and for sharing their viewpoints. And I thank our director, Mr. Yuvraj Malik, for providing the perspectives from the Indian point of view, and Ms. Neera Jain for sharing her views. Thank you. Thanks a lot.